Yo, what's up, guys? Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs found a way to win this hockey game tonight after a horrendous first 2.5 periods, guys. But the Leafs were able to find a win tonight, beating the Chicago Blackhawks 3-2 on Holy Macedon night, celebrating Joe Bowen, guys. Before I talk about the game, obviously, we got to talk about Joe Bowen for a second here. Joe Bowen has been a part of my life since the day I was born, obviously, since the minute I was able to watch a hockey game. One of the most iconic people connected to the Maple Leafs, obviously, outside of playing for the bloody team. Joe Bowen will forever be remembered as one of the greatest play-by-play guys in Maple Leafs history. The guy's been doing it since the bloody 80s. Congratulations to him on his future retirement, of course, coming up at the end of the year. Joe Bowen has had a major, major impact on a lot of generations in Maple Leafs history, guys. It's just very unfortunate that he will not be able to call the chance to hear the Maple Leafs, hear him say the Maple Leafs have won the Stanley Cup. That will probably be the only regret he has in his career, that he will not be able to call the Leafs winning a cup, guys. But other than that, thank you, Joe Bowen, for the incredible, incredible years and memories you have given us Leaf fans all throughout the history that you've had as the play-by-play guy. Now, what a hell of a hockey game this was. And I don't mean that in a good way, of course, for some reasons, obviously. Now, I think we can all agree that whoever's involved in YouTube and social media, whoever goes and does their videos tonight, whatever, was ready to rip this hockey team again tonight. After that 2.5 periods of performance, it was pathetic, to say the least. You got people saying that was the worst first period that they've seen all year, and I totally bloody agree. Berube's ripping the team. One shot on net after 12 minutes. Very well justified, of course. You give up a goal off a face-off. Joel Wall doesn't see the puck, of course. Not his fault at all. The Leafs look lifeless. On a night like I mentioned, you're celebrating Joe Bowen, and this is the type of game you show up and you play with. It was mind-blowing, to say the least. And then you see William Nylander turn the puck over, on a bloody power play. Chicago comes in on a 3-on-1, scoring again to make it 2-0. And the Leaf fans were getting impatient, booing the players. Absolutely justified, to say the least. The way this team played on Saturday against Edmonton, you expected a way better performance tonight by the Maple Leafs, and they did not do that for the first 2.5 periods. It was just pathetic. The second period was pathetic. Nothing really happened other than the Nyes opportunity early on and the Scott Laughton chance. It was just a very unwatchable game for most parts. Now, in the third period as well, things were looking bleak as well. We saw what this game was looking like. If Chicago had scored a couple more opportunities in the first period, even in the second, this game would have been over. But Joe Wall, who obviously returned from his injury, thank God. I thought Joe Wall played great again tonight, guys. Obviously him getting injured prior to the injury, Joe Wall was playing great as well. So he comes back from injury, continues to play great, gives the Maple Leafs a chance to win. And then OEL obviously starts off the comeback, who, for me, OEL has been one of the best players for the Maple Leafs this year, guys. And, him to get that goal, to make it 2-1, cut the deficit down to 1. You could start to see the Leafs finally getting their legs under them a little bit, and that's what's frustrating for us Leaf fans. It takes you 57 bloody minutes for you to get your freaking game going. You know what I mean? So then after we saw the Leafs draw a penalty, of course, and then we were thinking to ourselves, oh, God, a power play. It's like, what the hell are we going to do on this? The Leafs power play has been absolutely putrid all year, of course. They were 0 for 2, obviously, before they got that third power play opportunity. But luckily enough, after Craig Berube called out the leaders after that game against Edmonton, blasting them on the bench multiple times in this hockey game. William Nylander does a great job to win the puck in the corner. Matthews with a great shot. Vintage Austin Matthews there, guys. Top shelf there to tie up the hockey game. You see Matthews telling the crowd to get up, asking for some positive energy, of course, because the Leafs were obviously booing, the fans were obviously booing the Leafs, and it was justified, like I mentioned. So he wanted to see the crowd get going, and luckily enough, the crowd did get going. The Leafs obviously tied up, which was great to see, of course. And then 8 seconds later, the fourth fastest back-to-back goals in Leaf history, Stetcher dumps it in deep. Knight, unfortunately, tries to dump it in the corner for himself. Doesn't get it far enough into the corner. Josh was able to beat the defenseman in front of the net there. Josh was able to score there to give the Leafs a 3-2 lead. Luckily enough, there was only a couple minutes left in this game, guys. The Leafs were able to hold it down and find a way to get 2 bloody points. Now, listen, we can all agree the Leafs have a horseshoe up their ass in this game today. They are so freaking lucky that they got these 2 bloody points. Again, there were so many things to point at and say, this hockey team just is not good enough. People I saw on Twitter were saying, blow it up, trade everybody, start from scratch again. And listen, it's all justified, to be honest, because the way this team was playing, it was putrid. It was lifeless. They looked like they had no care. They looked like they were trying to get Craig Berube fired. They were looking like they were just disinterested and didn't give a shit that they were playing hockey tonight, But thank God they just go home with 2 points. Listen, we're just going to forget about this game and just say 2 points and that's it. But there's a lot of things to obviously be worried about. It takes you this long to get your game going. Your superstars didn't show up until the end of the game. And people are saying to ourselves, what are we going to do about this power play? Honestly, like Jesus bloody Murphy, Mark Savard, dude, you got to figure something out or else this guy's got to go. Luckily enough, Matthew scored that power play goal, or else it would have been another donut on the power play, guys. Honestly, it's not good enough, man. The Leafs have trouble entering their zone. You give up a shorthanded goal, obviously. These are unacceptable things to be allowing to happen. The Maple Leafs got to get their act together, even though they did get the 2 points. There is a lot of negative shit that I'm seeing. The one shot on net after 12 minutes, that's been a consistent problem with this hockey team the last year and a half, 2 years under Craig Berube, not getting enough shots generated, enough chances generated. Entering the zone hasn't been good enough. You're letting teams hem you in your own end at times, especially in that first period. Luckily enough, Chicago had that goal disallowed. Obviously, they were poking Joe Wall's pad instead of the puck. It would have been 3-0. This game, the Leafs wouldn't have even won this hockey game if the Leafs don't win that challenge there and get that goal called back. The Leafs had some very lucky moments in this game tonight, guys. I think we could all agree on that. Sheridan Matthews gets a goal and assist. Great. Nylander gets 2 assists. Fantastic. But at the same time, though, not enough production again from certain players like Domi, Robertson, McMahon. Nick Watt didn't do much tonight. Luckily enough, Joshua has been very good since his scratch. But, he didn't do very much tonight other than that goal. There just needs to be more consistency in this hockey team's game. But you're just not seeing it. And, even with it being Joe Bowen night, this is how you come on and perform for the man who's been calling your games for over 40 bloody years. And this is the performance you have. The first 2 periods we were all saying to ourselves, what the hell is this? You even can't get up for a night like this. It's what can this team get up for then? If they show no character in this game until the end, luckily. But my God, guys, there are a lot of scary things that we're seeing with this hockey team right now. And, there's been a lot of inconsistencies as of late. After the Leafs had 6 straight games with the point, you almost fall back into another ugly hole. If they don't win this game tonight, you only win 1 game on your 5-game homestand, that would have been a major, major cause for concern. It looked like at times they've been tuning out the coaches. The players, like I said, they just look disinterested on the ice. People are questioning Matthews' level of care. Should he get stripped? All these things I've been seeing on Twitter. And these are valid questions. I ain't going to lie to you. These are valid bloody questions. But my God, if these players just show a little bit more effort and energy for more than half of a bloody game, us fans won't complain. But you can't do that for only 3 minutes of a hockey game and steal 2 points. We'll accept it for one time. But we cannot continue to accept this for another 50 bloody games. We can't. It's unacceptable to be performing the way they performed tonight, guys. I think we could all agree on that. If it wasn't for Joe Wall's performance, and luckily enough, the Leafs had a little bit of life at the end of the game there, this game would have been another ugly performance tonight by the Maple Leafs. But we need to see more from this hockey team on a consistent basis. Like I mentioned, Berube's calling out the team. He's fuming on the bench. He's showing his frustration. But these players don't look like they're hungry to prove that they care. And they were showing that through 2.5 bloody periods. But luckily enough, guys, they were able to get 2 freaking points tonight. That it was a major, major scary thing to think that if this team here does not get 2 points against the Chicago Blackhawks team, without Connor freaking Bedard. You know, the guy's got 49% of their goals and assists. Like, come on, man. This would have been a major, major indictment on the Maple Leafs if you could not win a game without Chicago having Connor Bedard. You know, that would have been an even more telling situation regarding this hockey team. You know, the Leafs had everybody in their lineup except for obviously a couple guys like Tanev and Carlo and obviously Stolarz being out. And we don't know what's going to happen with that guy. You know, at least the Leafs are a little bit more transparent regarding that guy there. But still, this would have been a major, major frustrating loss if you lost to a team like Chicago without their best player. But luckily enough, the Leafs found a way to get 2 points tonight, guys. They hope to God that they have a better performance against the Washington Capitals in a couple days' time. They need redemption after blowing that lead they had against the Blackhawks a couple weeks ago. They need to play a better hockey game in a couple days' time. You know, after these last 2 performances were not good enough, even though, like I mentioned a couple times in this video, they have got the 2 points tonight. It doesn't freaking matter. They need to play more consistent hockey for a full 60 bloody minutes. We need to see more from guys like Nyes, obviously. We need to see more from McMahon and Robertson, Domi, like I mentioned, Waugh, Lawton, Lawrence. We need to see more from these guys. Cowan, too. We need to see more for this team here to show us that they are turning a corner and they can get back into a playoff spot and find a way to get back to the playoffs. But even if they do, guys, the way they're playing right now, they're not giving us any confidence, any hope that they can make a push for the playoffs. But listen, guys, tell me your thoughts and opinions on this game tonight, guys. Not a great performance for the Maple Leafs, but they found a way to steal this hockey game tonight. Listen, that's all you can be grateful for is getting the 2 points. You got a solid performance from your goaltender. Your captain showed up when you needed him to most. You know, you had some of your better players show up when you needed them to. And that's all we could say regarding this game, guys. But we need more consistency from this hockey team. That was an unacceptable 2.5 periods by this hockey team. A very frustrating 2.5 periods. We cannot continue to be seeing this shit for another 3 to 4 months, guys. Just unacceptable if you guys ask me. But tell me your thoughts and opinions on this game tonight, guys. Like this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Leafs, go as always, guys. We'll see you guys next episode of Leafs Unfiltered. Ciao, guys.